Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Elisabeth Weinstock. She is a multifaceted entrepreneur, dedicated philanthropist based in LA, and her journey is deeply rooted in her commitment to social justice and rehabilitation. She regularly visits prisons to offer guidance and support to inmates, educating them about the choices they can make to transform their lives, helping them overcome things like chemical dependency and embrace educational and rehabilitative programs to reintegrate back into society. She's also known for founding the luxury fashion brand Andine and her eponymous leather goods label Weinstock. And we recently met at a show. Oh my gosh, we didn't meet at a show. We met at seemed like a show. It was a gathering at our dear mutual friend Laura's house, and I was so moved by her story about working with ex-prisoners, really folks who are coming out of rehabilitation and helping them reintegrate back into society. And so it was really moving and touching to hear her story. So welcome to the show, Elisabeth.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Elisabeth, to kick it off, what do you spend most of your time thinking about and why?
I spend most of my time thinking about two things: creating and helping others. And that's how I spend my days. I'm a designer first. I have that brand Ondine that you mentioned and my other exotic skin brand. But my passion lies in my joy, which is helping others, specifically those formerly incarcerated.
So I want to double click into this because for me, this is a very, kind of fascinating world that I know very little about. And I'm really curious. And I think a lot of people who are listening in are also very curious about what it's like to, experience prison, but then also what that process is like with rehabilitation. So I'm really curious, what kind of programs or initiatives have you developed within that system and what are your primary goals?
My goals are to help those coming out of prison integrate into society and to help those that are trying to re-enter and really can't find footing, are not finding it easy in society after long periods of time incarcerated. I hold a platform for them on Zoom every week as well. I do go into the prison and hold different meetings.
So tell us like a little bit more about what are the things that you work on with folks who are in these programs? Are there specific themes that you work through or work on? And what are some of the the common challenges that that they are facing and that also that you are facing in this?
So I'll start with the goal. The program that I have set up is based on the 12 steps because I've been clean and sober for 37 years. And I've been around long enough to see and know and hear that if basically AA would have been started a decade later, they would have just called it Addicts Anonymous and we would all go to the same place. So, whether I always say in these meetings, because you have all kinds, all walks, if you shoot up, throw up, snort up, drink up, are addicted to a criminal lifestyle, you're in the right place. AA was founded, it relies on the kindness of strangers. And that resonates with me, and I believe in that. The challenges that I face the most are the biggest one is when I lose a member of the group. That one hits hard for me.
And what are kind of some of the challenges that they face in this experience? Like maybe you could share a story or two that I'm personally very curious to hear a little bit more about an example could be of someone who is working through any kind of inner world issue at that moment in time.
So there's multiple answers. So I'll start with if you're incarcerated and you're new in newly incarcerated, you are there's a lot of politics in prison. You are trying to find your footing. You're trying to find your people. You're forced to partake in certain crime. You're forced to join a certain sect. And the people that were your friends or even your gang friends in your life on the outside, you're no longer able to associate with. It's segregated by race and color. So life changes for you very quickly, and you're forced to think quick, and you're forced to act quickly and not die. And in prison, I always talk with the guys about, you could get killed for the wrong kind of glance. You can also get killed for, a cup of noodles or anything in between. In the prison that I go to, the main one that I go to, it's a level 4, which is a maximum security prison. Now level 3 or 4, 3 and 4. It is, you keep your head down, you watch your back, your head is on a swivel, and it's only within the group, whenever it's the group setting, that they really get to drop their shoulders. And that's where the magic happens. And I see it happen. And it's a beautiful thing. They can let go of worry for a minute. They can let go of shame for a minute. They can let go of any preconceived notions of what I might think of them, or their peers might think of them, or others in the group that they don't even know might think of them. And that's something that brings me immense joy to see that happen for them. So often I go to the prison and I meet guys that, I met a guy that was incarcerated for 44 years, and it was the first time that I had met him, and he shared on the meeting because I form the chairs in a circle and we go around. And I brought up a topic that he liked and it resonated with him, and he shared. And when he first started sharing, everybody gasped and I didn't understand. And it was just like the floodgates opened, and he went on for about 5 or 10 minutes. And at the end of the meeting, 3 of the men came up to me and said, "I don't know what you did, but Cornelius has never shared in a group meeting before." And so that's something that's magical and beautiful to me. And I was so grateful that I was able to provide that space for him to where he felt safe enough to do that.
Wow. I'm also curious, like, what kind of incarcerated folks are you working with or dealing with? And, what has been your experience of the justice system in general? Like, I'm really, again, I'm very unaware, really, of this space. So I'm very curious, and specifically rehabilitation back into society, because I think that part for me just doesn't, at least on the outside, it doesn't seem like we have a lot of programs for that. So I'm just curious, what's been your experience of the system itself? And yeah.
Well, I think that the prison system is beyond flawed. I would call it broken. I think they're very understaffed. I think that the CRM, which stands for Community Resource Manager, who is in charge of programming, is definitely always understaffed. And they fumble to try to find personnel that want to work overtime to sit in on these groups that are, in fact, created by the inmates. They're not created by the prison system or the personnel there. And so, as an example, one of the meetings that I was attending, a CGA meeting, which stands for Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous, at Lancaster Prison. It's a fantastic meeting. It's run by a man that I met there who is fascinating. His attitude is pure joy. And I think when he gets out, which is, I think, very soon, he will go very far in this lifetime. And what happened was the woman who was the quote sponsor, who worked overtime to put in time to go to this meeting every Thursday, she moved on to another job, and the meeting got shut down. And there was just no meeting, and it's been about 9 weeks now. So there will still be a graduation that I'll be able to attend next week. I'm looking forward to that, but it just saddens me that bureaucracy and the way that the system is set up doesn't offer more resources to these people.
Mm.
I also offered to go in and run the meeting myself, but within a prison system, you need to have a brown card to be able to go in on your own. So that's not yet an option.
What is a brown card?
A brown card, it basically lets you go into any prison. It's basically carte blanche.
What about this reintegration back into society? Because, I, of course, there's like a range of different crimes committed. And, it's interesting. I think that our perception in society sort of doesn't differentiate what that crime is. That's just been my experience, but I'm curious, what sorts of ways have people gone back into the quote unquote real world? Are they facing difficulty finding work? What is the state of their mental health? And yeah, I'm just kind of curious also if you could ground us in one or two stories of people that you've worked with.
So I'll tell you a story that is a repeated story that I hear all the time in different ways from different men and women. Because they created these programs, these inmates, and they're growing and they're sustainable, they've created their own curriculum. Many of them are formatted around the 12 steps. They are seemingly getting a lot of programming. So when you're in prison and you're going to program a lot of the day and you're working and your time is filled up, you're starting to feel really good about yourself. You have your group that you are now accustomed to. You know their stories, they know yours. You start to share secrets and what your life story and journey has been about. You share your testimony, and that's really becomes a safe haven for them. When they come out into the world after, let's call it 5, 6, 7, 8 years of doing these different kinds of programs, and you come into society after being gone for decades, let's call it, and you've never really seen a computer. You come outside, and life is very fast. You are startled, and you don't have your crew anymore, which is the very reason why I'm so passionate about this and why I hold this group religiously every Wednesday night, so that these people can have this place to come and check in and get their fill of their soul's purpose, of what their journey could be like on the outside, and create a community and a sense of family that they might not have any longer. Either because their family has passed on, they don't have the support, they're now out of prison, and that became their family. So some of the problems that I see are very much built around that. I have a guy who was just absolutely doing amazing at everything he did in prison. And he got out and he is now depressed. He started gambling and started drinking, and he started cheating on his girlfriend who waited for him for years. And it sort of started to spiral from there. And that's something that I see because they don't really know how to handle society, especially today, 2024. I've taken one of them as an example. He never had a birthday party. He's been in and out of first juvenile homes and then prison since the age of 7. And he's now 47. And I took him out for his first birthday dinner. And I asked him, "What do you want to eat?" He wanted to eat steak. So we go to a restaurant and I ask him, "What kind of steak would you like?" And he said, "You mean there's more than one kind?" So these little things that we take for granted, that it would never even dawn on us to consider, that's what's real, not being able to work the volume on Zoom for 5 minutes while we're all waiting. But we wait and we welcome them home because they need that kind of support. I will say that a lot of these men and women went away and did crimes, and you asked about crimes, so I'll talk about that as well. They went away at such a young age, as young teenagers, after being in gangs, gang violence, being in the streets, really not having any family support. So they're creating these false families that they call family, these gangs, and they have to put in work, is what it's called. And they have to go, do things that many of them would never really do. So there's the question of, is it nature versus nurture? Where does it start, right? And they go to first juvie, and then they go juvenile hall, and then they end up in prison, and that's where they grow up, and they become a ward of the state for basically most of their lives. And that's all they know.
So prison then becomes home.
That prison becomes home, and it becomes safer than they know until they're out and they're scared to death. I've had guys on my meetings say it was so much easier on the inside. I wouldn't be mad if I went back. At least I knew what I was going to get. So I had a woman who was incarcerated for 15 years, and she spoke on my meeting last week. And she was never a problem. And she had a boyfriend who liked to drink, and she started drinking with her boyfriend. And one night she went out to meet him, and on her way home, she hit the median in the freeway. And she got home, and she was scared that her dad would get mad at her. And she put the car inside of the garage. So the next morning, her sister comes into her room and wakes her up and says, "What did you do?" And she goes, "Oh God, I know. I hit the side of the freeway." And her sister said, "What are you talking about? Who did you kill?" Well, she hit a Caltrans worker, a young woman who she killed with her car. And she had no idea because she was in a blackout when she was driving. So she goes to court, and they're asking all the people that come to court, or get lawyers, DA, just everybody's telling her, here's what you need to plead, here's what you need to plead. And they put up on the screen the images of what happened to the woman and what she looked like and what the scene of the crime looked like. And she looked at those images, and she looked at the judge, and she said, "I plead guilty." And she said, "If I did this, what I'm seeing right here, I deserve to be punished. I only ask that you don't give me life." And so she did 17 years, on a 25 to life sentence. And she did 17 of those years. And she was, before that, like a very good student. She was a great family member, daughter, sister, and she goes to prison, and she grew up there. And she is completely traumatized now. And I checked in with her, and I asked her how she was doing. And she told me that she had this episode where she went into her kitchen, and she started stacking her cup of noodles very, very neatly. And then she thought to herself, what am I doing? And so she goes into her room, and she's sitting on the edge of her bed, and her mom comes in to talk to her. And her mother's talking to her, and she's like, "Mom, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it?" And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And she goes, "Is it past 4?" And she thought she was going to miscount, because they do count at 4 p.m. every day in prison. And she was having these she's been having these traumatic experiences because that's where she grew up.
Wow. So, I'm so curious. I mean, this sounds like just soul crushing on so many levels, right? Like especially when there's young, teenagers, children involved in this type of, crime. Obviously there's probably some kind of story of neglect with family, right? And not having a core, or at least a healthy container for growing up. So it just seems heartbreaking the way the system works. And I'm also curious, what your kind of stance is on the systems, or I guess like our society's ability to forgive those who, who've gone through the prison system. What are people's sort of sentiments or reactions to society's kind of perspective?
I believe that our societies are very much in the dark about those formerly incarcerated. I think, and I've heard said in many different ways, well, they're out now, they're fine, they're free, they should be lucky, they should count their lucky stars. Be that as it may, I don't believe that society is knowledgeable at all in what that looks like. One of the reasons that I do what I do is so that I can help them rehabilitate ongoingly, because it is a process. It's an ongoing process. I participate in my own recovery each and every week because I treat it like my life depends on it, because it does. I was a drug addict myself. I was a nightmare, and I came out of it and got sober super young. And I got to change that story and rewrite it. I could have gone to jail. I could have gone to prison many times over. But to circle back to your question on what society thinks, society doesn't really know. And I don't think that they give it much thought unless they're versed or want to know, ask questions about it. I often invite different walks of life into my meeting to witness the beauty and the magic that happens in there and the love that gets shared, because in the end, love heals all. And if people were enlightened, I think it would be a beautiful thing. I
Hmm.
am helping them from my end to reintegrate into society, therefore making society a safer place to live. That's what we need. That's more and more of what we need. So, goals that I have would be to create my own 501c3, which I'm starting to work on now, and have a building that houses some of them, that offers them opportunities, offers them therapy, offers them groups, resources, things that they need. And there are many that do it now. And I believe it will continue to grow.
Amazing, amazing. I want to go back to your own story. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, how you sort of arrived in a place where if people could see you, you're like this like very petite brunette, beautiful petite brunette. And I just, kind of like laugh thinking about you, helping prisoners rehabilitate back into society.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm curious, what was your journey like? And I also think, one thing I said, which was probably a mistake, is that there are people that actually grow up in very healthy, happy, maybe socioeconomically advantaged homes, and yet still end up in prison, right? And so I want to make sure that that
Yes.
is also underscored.
That is absolutely true. We're not even factoring in or talking yet about, which I am not versed in, by the way, mental illness, because that's a real thing. There are so many facets to what could happen within a world of a human being, right? For me, what on the outside, my life looked beautiful. I come from a good family. I come from a good home, a hardworking father. My mother was a model. I mean, it was all beautiful on the outside. What happened for me was something was wrong. I think I was just born bored. I think I was born looking for the good old times. I never fit in. And as young as I could remember, I never felt like I was enough. I wasn't good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, sexy enough. I believed in the lie that as I wasn't enough. And so at the age of about 13, when I found drugs, it was just, I was off to the races. It was weed, it was hash, it was coke, all in the first month. And then it was vodka straight out of the bottle. And then it was pills, mushrooms. And it ended up where I was addicted to a drug called loads, which doesn't even exist anymore, which is like heroin. And then ultimately, I became a heroin addict at the age of 16. And I was going downtown by myself, middle of the night. I was sharing dirty needles with disgusting people, and I didn't die by the grace of God. And there were days that I thought I would. There were many days that I wanted to, but God had a different plan for me. And, I got sent away to boarding school. And when I came back from boarding school, my habit just got worse because addiction is like reading a book. It's a progressive disease. It gets worse, never better. And my disease grew and grew. And I ended up, going into rehab. And I had a 33-day stint in rehab. 23 of those days were spent in detox. I had a $250 a day heroin addiction, and I was robbing people all day long. And I have many stories of me downtown doing that. And, 23 days in detox. Now you could detox in off opiates or heroin, maybe like 48 hours, or you get your money back. That was not my experience. I didn't sleep for the first 6 months out of rehab. And I really didn't know anything. I didn't know how to function in the world. So I would just go to meetings. I would just go to AA meetings, and I would sit in the back of the room. I was this punk rock kid with this bright pink hair. And back then that wasn't okay. And, I sat in the back because I believed that if you knew me and you really got to know me, you wouldn't like me and I wouldn't be accepted. And there was this juxtaposition of come here, get away, come here, get away. But I just kept going and I kept showing up. And by the grace of God, I stayed sober and went on to have a kid who's never seen me use. My son is 32 years old. And what happened was his dad and I were divorced by the time he was 7. And I took him to this therapist woman who would, I wanted him to have somebody outside of us to speak with and talk about his feelings. And every time I would get him, at the end, she would say, God, Elisabeth, you're so good. Why don't you go help other kids? And she said it to me so many times that finally I said to her, okay, Bonnie, where would you like me to go? And she gave me a list of youth centers. And the first one on the list was called A Place Called Home. And it was downtown on 28th and Central, an area that I knew all too well. So I went down there and I asked to volunteer. And there were all these bald kids running around in baggy clothes. And I saw them and I asked one of them, what's your deal? What are you guys doing? And he said, this kid, Miguel, said, this is our gang territory that she opened this youth center in. So she hired us all to protect the place. And, I sat on the board of that youth center for a little while, and I ended up starting a group in there that was a 12-step program for life for this group of gang members. And it started there 25 years ago. And so since then, I've been on this journey helping these gang members. And then I ended up at a men's home in Watts to speak at an AA meeting. And they asked me, the guy that was running it asked me if I would come back on Tuesdays to run a CGA meeting. And I said, what's that? And he said, Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous. And I said, I'm not a gang member. And he said, the hell you're not. He said, but you're criminal as hell. And I said, okay, when do you want me to come? And he said, Tuesdays. And I said, Tuesdays? He goes, yes, can you come every Tuesday? And I did. I would drive from my office in West Hollywood to Watts every Tuesday. And with, 38, 40 men and me at the helm, I would run this meeting for years. And then COVID happened. And so a group of transitional homes, they're called the Francisco Homes, the man that runs those asked that man, do you know anybody that can run a meeting for us on Zoom, a CGA meeting? And he said, yes, I have the perfect person. We need her to do that. And so I've been doing it on Zoom since 2020, every Wednesday.
Wow. Elisabeth, this story is so moving and so touching. And And it just, I think it opens up my heart. I'm sure that those who are listening also feel the same. I'm also, curious, what do you need from, what do you want from the world? Or what would be like your dream to help more people? Just curious, like, how can we get involved or how can we support you?
Thank you. That's a great question. When I have my 501c3 set up, you'll be the first one. It's called Only Miracles. We just coined that. I just coined that phrase recently. And what I'm looking for is I'm going to be getting a building and housing some of them. I'm looking for just open hearts and open minds to opening your mind to the possibility of how much love and joy people can bring to your lives that have really gone through so very much and really are rehabilitated. Some of the most beautiful, elegant, graceful people that are in my phone book have been to prison.
Mm. I love
And
that.
I think that that's what I ask the most is opening hearts and pouring out love.
Beautiful. How has your kind of point of view evolved over time, especially, coming out of the pandemic? I'm, curious, has the prison system, has the integration gotten better, gotten worse? What's playing out?
I have a feeling that things are going to be changing soon. Maybe that's just intuition, which is something that honestly kept me alive my whole life, my intuition. And I just say, yes, God, and follow the next indicated act. And it's led me to where I am today, even doing this podcast, having left my office early to come sit in quiet to do it because it's the most important thing and what matters most to me. I believe that things will change. Policies are changing. People that had life without parole are now being let out of prison. They're being able to go to board earlier. They're being able to get a lesser sentence now than they ever were before. If you had what's called LWOP, life without parole, you were never getting out. And that's not the case anymore. In fact, many of the people on my meeting each week had LWOP and they are all out now. And I think that things are going to change. I think people are really starting to come around and understand that there's great people in there, people that have done far too much time. They got the memo, they got the message, and they really want to help in the world.
What are some decisions that you made that felt difficult but important as you kind of traverse this journey?
Time, my time, how important it is. They say that your greatest day in life is the day you're born, and the other one is when you figure out your purpose. So at first, when I started going to the prison, they asked me, can you come every week? And my answer was, I wish I could. If I could helicopter over there, I would. It's far. And in giving it some thought since then, and I'm going back to meet with them next week, I'm going to say yes, because I can't afford not to. Too much needs to be done. And I think that my voice is strong and it can help a lot of people. And that's what I want to do. So I don't know the answers except for intuitively, I think things are changing and they're going to start to catch wind. More stories need to be heard. Apologies need to be made. Some of the most beautiful moments that I've seen on my meeting would just make you gasp. Apologies happening. And if you have time, I'll tell you this one quick story that's really beautiful because on my meeting, I have, I don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah, please.
But I have different people speak on the meeting, a lot of people that were formerly incarcerated, some are that are just addicts, some are that are victims. And so one person I had speak on my meeting was a woman who was married to a gang member who was pregnant. And she was 8 months pregnant, and her husband tried to get her to not go to work that day. And she said, I'm going, I need the money. And he said, okay, I'm going to go hang out with Juan. And when she got home from work, he never came home. And later, Juan's wife called and said, get in your car and come here. And they drove 2 blocks to a crime scene, and it was her husband's clothes. And they said, "Ma'am, you have to go to the hospital." Cut to, her husband was killed. And they wouldn't let her see him. And then they finally did. And she was devastated beyond, as you can imagine. And she tells this story in great detail on the meeting and to a bunch of people who have committed that crime. And at the time, I thought the meeting froze because no one was moving. But what happened next was she ended her story. She spelled it out for a long time. She told us what it was like. And then I started calling on the men. At the time in the meeting, it was only men and her and me. And I called on this man, Robert, who was this older Latino man. And I said, "Robert, would you like to check in? Would you like to share?" And he said, "Yes, Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your story. I just want to say I'm sorry for killing your husband." Now, it was a metaphor. It wasn't Robert that killed her husband, but Robert committed that same crime and was not allowed to apologize. He was on parole, and it's a breach of parole. But he did get to apologize. He committed a crime when he was 15. At the time of the meeting, he was 67, and he had just been released. And I said, "Dennis, would you like to share?" And Dennis said, "Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I, too, want to just say I'm really sorry for killing your husband." And it just went on, and everybody was crying. It was so powerful. And magic like that happens. And we talk a lot about, if you could take it back, what would that look like? Let's redo that day. Walk us through your day. I do all these different interesting exercises. They never know what they're going to get. That always makes them think, because they say if you make a person think, they'll remember it, as opposed to just telling them things. And so the truth is that, people don't know how much you know unless they know how much you care.
Mm. Wow. So moving, Elisabeth. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, just the power. It just, seems like such a powerful way to acknowledge the reality that we're all, we come from the same source, and we're all going to return to that same source. And right. And wow. What has surprised you the most, looking back on your journey, Elisabeth?
I think I am definitely most surprised when I'm inside the prison. When I first went to the prison, they said, "You're going to be with this sponsor. She has an alarm on her." And then she left the room for a while. And I was like, "This is weird. Hold on a minute," in my head. But then what happened was we just started talking and connecting. And I really realized how, first of all, women are very revered in a place like that. They are kind, they're respectful, they're patient, present, graceful, and they have never, in all the times I've gone, ever been anything other than gentlemen towards me. That was surprising at first. But then as I started to go in more and started to have a rapport with them, what I realized was how similar we are, and how I could have got caught for something terrible, but didn't, but they did. And how I see on their faces that they're sorry and they wish they could take it back. And I realize that God is good. And they were afforded the luxury of even being inside that meeting, inside that room, participating in their own recovery. And they always surprise me with how smart they are, how kind, and how resilient. It really, really makes me think. Every time I leave, I'm filled with joy.
And then where can people find you? What's like where can people navigate if they want to volunteer, or if they want to just get in contact with you?
Well, so I did just start onlymiracles.org on Instagram, literally on Sunday. I also have this Zoom meeting on every single Wednesday night, which I can give you the number to here in this forum that we're in right now, that people can log on to 7 to 8:15 p.m. every Wednesday night Pacific time. And the Zoom link is 9980-603-0976. It's a meeting for everyone and all who wants to be informed, feel connected, participate, or anything in between.
And
you're invited. You're welcome to join. I would love that.
And this is for anyone?
Yes, it's a CGA meeting. However, it is my meeting and it is for everyone because I think it's so informative and you get to really see the pure joy and the honor and the truth that's expressed, and it's needed.
Beautiful. Amazing.
One of the things actually to that note I'm trying to do is get it up on a screen in the prison so that the prisoners can watch it since they can't participate.
Amazing. Okay. Well, Elisabeth, we are at time, but I'm, so grateful for your message and very grateful that you exist in this world and that you're doing this kind of work. And is there any kind of call to action or main takeaway that you want to ask of our guests?
I think I really said it all, but that everyone matters and that love heals all, and that we've all made choices and mistakes, and that many of us have done horrible things, and that many people are truly sorry and wish they could take it back. But that doesn't mean that we have to throw away the key.
All right, my dear. Well, thank you again for your time. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about rehabilitation and reintegration after prison with Elisabeth Weinstock. And you could tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed, and you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.